My name is Dana Whitcomb. I'm 34 years old, and I was the daughter who drove 4 hours every Sunday to change my father's catheter while my brother built a life he never let us see. At Aaron's funeral, my mother stood at the pulpit, looked past the front row where I sat, and said, "Aaron was always our golden child, the one who made us proud. Not everyone in this family did." Then she looked at me, and she smiled. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just folded my hands in my lap and waited, because I already knew something they didn't. 3 days later, a lawyer named Priya Sundaram would open a sealed envelope in a conference room on the 11th floor of a building downtown, and my parents would learn exactly who their golden child had been. What Aaron wrote in that will didn't just surprise them. It rearranged their entire understanding of the last 11 years. And it started with a single sentence they never saw coming. But before I tell you what that sentence was, I need you to do something for me. If you've ever been the invisible one in your family, the one who showed up while everyone else showed off, subscribe right now and comment what city you're watching from. I read everyone. This story is for the people who stayed. So stay with me. Let me take you back to the beginning. I was born second. Aaron was 3 years older, and by the time I arrived, my parents had already decided how the story would go. Aaron was the sun. I was the weather. He got the trophies, the corner bedroom, the college fund that my father called an investment in this family's future. I got hand-me-downs and a folding cot in the sewing room. That's not bitterness talking. That's just the floor plan. Aaron's room had a window that faced the garden. Mine faced the driveway, so I always knew who was coming and who was leaving. Fitting, I suppose. I spent my whole childhood watching the door. My father, Gerald, sold insurance for 31 years. My mother, Colleen, taught Sunday school at a church with 2,800 members and a parking lot bigger than the sanctuary. They were pillars. Everyone said so. They collected casseroles for the sick and prayers for the dying, and they told me constantly that grace was the highest virtue. Grace. They loved that word. My mother had it cross-stitched on a pillow in the living room. Grace. She just never seemed to have any left over for me. Aaron left for college when I was 15, and something in the house went quiet. He came back for holidays with stories about internships and girlfriends whose fathers owned things. My parents drank it in. When it was my turn to apply, my father sat me down at the yellow Formica kitchen table, the one with the chip on the corner shaped like Ohio, and told me the money was gone. The investment had matured into Aaron. So I worked. 2 jobs, then 3. I cleaned offices at night with a woman named Rosa, who taught me the only Spanish I know and the most important thing anyone ever taught me, that dignity isn't given, it's carried. Aaron and I drifted, the way siblings do when one is anointed and one is overlooked. He'd call twice a year. He got a job in another state, something in logistics that he was always vague about. My parents bragged about it without knowing what it was. That's the part that still gets me. They were proud of a life they couldn't even describe. They just knew it was better than mine. They knew that the way you know the weather, by instinct, by whose side of the sky was lit. Then my father got sick. It started with his hands. April, 4 years ago. He'd drop his coffee mug, the chipped blue one he refused to replace, and blame the handle. By June, he couldn't button his own shirt. By September, the doctors had a name for it, a long one, and a timeline that nobody wanted to say out loud. My mother called Aaron first. Of course she did. Aaron said he'd come when he could. He was busy. Things were happening. Big things. She called me second, not to ask, to inform. "Your father needs someone," she said. "Aaron has responsibilities." As if I didn't. As if the $11 an hour job and the tiny apartment and the life I was quietly building didn't count as responsibilities. But I went. Because that's who I am. That's the whole tragedy of people like me. We show up, even for the people who kept the door closed. So I started driving 4 hours each way every Sunday. I know it was 4 hours because I logged every trip, mileage, gas, the times I left, and the times I got home. I didn't do it for revenge. I did it because when you grow up invisible, you learn to document your own existence. You keep receipts on yourself, just in case someone someday asks whether you were really there. I have 187 of those logs. First entry, October 6th. Last entry, 3 weeks before Aaron died. That's when I started seeing the gap. The real one. Aaron didn't come. Not that first winter. Not the second. He sent money sometimes, a check for $500 with a note that said, "For Dad's meds," which my mother framed. She actually framed the note. It hung in the hallway next to the cross stitch. Meanwhile, I was the one lifting my father into the shower, learning to change a catheter from a YouTube video at 2 in the morning, holding a basin while he apologized to me over and over for being a burden. He never apologized to Aaron. Aaron was never there to hear it. I want you to understand the shape of those years. It wasn't dramatic. That's what nobody tells you about caregiving. It's not a montage. It's a Tuesday. It's the same Tuesday 400 times. It's warming soup he can't taste. It's the smell of the room. It's your own life going gray at the edges while everyone praises the brother who sends a check. My mother would take calls from Aaron at the kitchen table while I scrubbed the bathroom floor 8 feet away, and she'd laugh at his jokes with a warmth I had never once heard aimed at me. Then she'd hang up and tell me I'd missed a spot. I missed a spot. That's what she said. Kneeling would have hurt her knees, so she just pointed. I missed a spot. Then my father died. February, a Thursday, 4:12 in the morning. I was holding his hand. His hands were warm right up until they weren't, and I remember thinking that was the cruelest trick a body could play. Aaron flew in for the funeral. First time I'd seen him in 2 years. He wore a suit that cost more than my car, and he cried the loudest, and my mother held him like he was the one who'd been there. At the reception, a woman I didn't know squeezed my arm and said, "Your brother's devotion is so beautiful." I said thank you. Because what else do you say? Grace isn't what you preach. It's who you show up for. I just kept showing up for people who couldn't see me, and then Aaron got sick too. Nobody expected it. He was 37. It was fast, the way these things sometimes are. A diagnosis in March, gone by the following January. And here's the thing that will tell you everything about my family. When Aaron got sick, they didn't call me to help. They called me to stay away. My mother told me, in those words, Aaron needs his peace. This is a time for the people who matter to him. I wasn't one of them. His golden light was dimming, and they wanted to keep me out of the glow. So I didn't go. For once in my life, I stayed away. And I have spent every day since wondering if that was the biggest mistake I ever made, or the only time I ever put myself first. But that wasn't the bombshell. The bombshell came in a phone call. October, 3 months before Aaron died. A number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail. Call duration, when I checked later, 41 minutes. It was Aaron. His voice was thin, sanded down by whatever was eating him, but it was him. And the first thing my brother said to me after 2 years of silence was, "Dana, I need to tell you the truth about everything, and I don't have much time to do it." I pulled over on the side of Route 9, and I listened to my brother for 41 minutes. And by the end of it, nothing I thought I knew about my family was still standing. Hit the like button right now, because what Aaron told me on that call is the reason everything you're about to hear happened the way it did. And if you've ever found out that the story your family told about you was a lie, comment the word "went." Just that one word. So I know you're still here. Here's what Aaron told me. The logistics job that my parents bragged about and couldn't describe, it didn't exist. Not the way they thought. Aaron had started a company, a real one, from nothing, in a rented room with a folding table, not so different from the cot I grew up on. And it had worked. Quietly, enormously, It had worked. But that's not the part that made me pull over. The part that made me pull over was this. For the last 6 years, Aaron had been paying for our father's care. Not the $500 checks. Those were theater, he admitted, for our mother, so she'd frame them and feel provided for. The real money went somewhere else. It went to me. Or through me, rather, in ways I never saw. The nursing supplies that always seemed cheaper than the pharmacy quoted. The medication co-pays that mysteriously came back adjusted. The specialist in the city who somehow had a cancellation the exact week my father needed him, a man whose fee was $28,000, waived, covered by a foundation grant, they said. There was no foundation. There was Aaron. My brother had been watching me the whole time, not from the garden window, from further away and more helplessly and with more shame than I ever imagined a person could carry. I let them think it was me, he said. I let them love the wrong son, and I let you carry the weight because I was a coward and because I told myself the money was enough. It wasn't. Money is what you send when you can't stand to show up. You showed up, Dana. You're the only one who ever showed up. I asked him why. Why he stayed away? Why he let our mother build a shrine to a brother who was hiding? And he told me the last thing I ever expected. He said, because they don't love people. They love the version of a person they can brag about. I gave them one so they'd leave you alone. It didn't work. I'm sorry it didn't work. Then he said there was one more thing. Something he'd already set in motion. Something I wouldn't understand until after he was gone. I've written it all down, he said. Every number. Every date. It's with a lawyer. When the time comes, you won't have to say a word. The paper will say it for you. Just be in the room, Dana. Whatever they say about me, whatever they say about you, just be in the room. 3 months later, he was gone. And I was in the room. The funeral was held at the big church, the one with 2,800 members. My mother planned it like a coronation. There were 400 folding chairs, and they filled everyone. Aaron's face was blown up to the size of a door and set on an easel by the altar. And beneath it, on a little card, my mother had written, "Our golden child." I sat in the second row, not the first. The first was reserved, with a little laminated sign, for family. I sat behind the sign that told me what I was, and then my mother stood up, and she gave the eulogy I told you about at the start. She said Aaron was the one who made them proud. She said, not everyone in this family did. She looked at me, she smiled, and 400 people turned, just slightly, to see who she meant. I want to tell you, I felt rage. I didn't. I felt the strangest calm I have ever felt in my life, because I could feel the envelope in my purse, the one Priya Sundaram had told me not to open, the one Aaron had promised would say the words I never could. I sat in that borrowed pew, and I let my mother finish. I let her have her coronation, because I knew that in 3 days, in a conference room 11 floors up, the paper was going to speak. And when paper speaks, it doesn't cry. It doesn't miss a spot. It just tells the truth, in order, with dates. But there was one more thing in that envelope, something even Priya didn't know the contents of. Aaron had left instructions that one item was to be read aloud, not in the lawyer's office, but at the funeral, by me. And it was about to change everything. Here's how it happened. After my mother sat down, the pastor asked if anyone else wished to speak. This was the moment Aaron had built. I know that now. He'd written to the pastor, weeks before, and asked that his sister be given the floor last, no matter what. The pastor, who owed Aaron nothing except the truth, honored it. He said my name. Dana. Aaron asked that you have the final word. You could hear the room shift. My mother's head snapped toward me. She hadn't planned for this. There was no laminated sign for this. I walked up the aisle past the easel with my brother's giant face, and I set a single folded page on the podium, and I unfolded it, and I read what my brother wrote. Not my words. His. He wanted it that way. He wanted them to hear it in his voice, one last time, through mine. He wrote, To everyone in this room who thinks they knew me. You knew a check. You knew a suit at a funeral. You did not know me. The person who knew me is standing here reading this, and most of you had to be told her name. Her name is Dana. For 11 years, she drove 4 hours every Sunday to care for the father you all praised me for saving. I saved no one. I paid because paying let me stay away, and staying away let me stay your golden child. I am done being your golden child. I would trade every dollar I ever made for one Sunday of the courage my sister had every single week. The room did not make a sound. My mother's hand was over her mouth, and I wasn't finished, because the letter wasn't finished. Mom, you will stand at my funeral and call me the one who made you proud. I know you will, because you cannot help it. So let me correct the record while I still can. You were never proud of me. You were proud of a story. Dana is the story. She always was. You just never thought to ask whose hands were actually warm at the end. I folded the paper. I looked at my mother, and I said the only words in the whole thing that were mine. I said, I missed a spot. For 30 years. This was it. Then I walked back to the second row, and I sat down behind the little sign that said family. And for the first time in my life, I understood I had never needed their permission to be it. But the letter was only the beginning. Because 3 days later came the will. And the will had numbers. The conference room was on the 11th floor. Priya Sundaram sat at the head of a long table, and my parents sat on one side, and I sat on the other, and there was a box of tissues in the middle that nobody touched. My mother would not look at me. She'd aged a decade in 3 days. My father sat beside her, silent, the way he'd been silent my whole life, and an uncle and a cousin who'd flown in smelling money filled out the room. Priya read the will, and here is where the documentation my brother promised became real. Aaron's estate was worth, after everything, $14.2 million. The room made a sound like all the air leaving at once. My mother actually reached for the arm of her chair. $14.2 million. From the logistics job they could never describe. And then Priya read the distribution. To our mother, Colleen. The sum of every check Aaron had ever sent home. $500 at a time, 43 checks, $21,500 total. Returned to her, the will read, framed, since she valued the frame more than the sun. To the church with 2,800 members. Nothing, with a note that read, you had a shepherd. You should have asked who was actually tending the flock. To the cousin who flew in, a copy of Dana's mileage logs, so he can see what showing up looks like. And to me? Priya paused before she read it, and she looked at me, and I understood she'd read it before, and it had gotten to her too. To Dana Whitcomb. The remainder, all of it. $14.1 million and something else. A trust already established, already funded in our father's name. The Sunday Fund. To pay for in-home care for families who cannot afford it, so that no daughter ever again has to choose between her life and her father's hands. Aaron had funded it with $3 million, and he'd named me its director. For life. My mother finally spoke. She said, this isn't fair. I'm his mother. And Priya, without looking up, read the final line of the will, which Aaron had clearly written for exactly this moment. It said, fairness is a receipt. I kept all of mine. Ask Dana to see hers. That was the reckoning. The aftermath came quieter. There was a lawsuit, briefly. The cousin, and then my mother, contested the will. It lasted 4 months. It failed because my brother had recorded a video. 22 minutes, time-stamped, a doctor present to attest he was of sound mind, reading the will aloud himself and explaining every line. When the judge watched it, the case was over. My mother called me after. Once. She said she was sorry. It didn't feel like triumph. It felt like standing in a house after everyone's gone home. She said, I didn't know. I said, you did. You just never thought to ask. Then I hung up. Call duration. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The last conversation I ever had with my mother. I built the Sunday Fund into something real. In 3 years, we've paid for in-home care for 1,140 families. Every one of them gets a logbook on the first day. I tell them what Rosa told me in that empty office building at midnight. Dignity isn't given, it's carried. So carry it and write it down. Keep receipts on yourself, because someday someone might ask whether you were really there. I framed one thing from all of it. Not a check, not the will. The very first mileage log. October 6th, 4 hours out, 4 hours back. Gas, $31.40. In the notes column, in my own handwriting from a version of me who had no idea any of this was coming, I'd written one word: went. I keep it where my mother once kept her cross stitch. Hers said grace, mine says went. Everything else is just a frame around that. If you're the one who shows up, the one who drives the 4 hours, while everyone else sends a check and takes the credit. You already know the rest of this story because you're already living it. You're not invisible. They just never thought to ask your name. Comment the word went if you're still here. I'll see you in the next one.